Emily sat on the edge of a worn-out sofa, her gaze fixed on the empty formula canister on the cluttered coffee table, as if she could pierce through it. The hum of the old fridge filled the room like a melancholy tune accompanying the life she was desperately trying to hold together. In the next room, Lily slept soundly, her delicate face serene like an angel untouched by the storms her mother was battling. But Emily didn't have the luxury to admire her daughter's peaceful slumber. With trembling hands, she picked up her phone. Every tap on the screen felt like a dagger twisting in her heart. "CLA, could you lend me some money to buy formula for Lily? I know. I hate asking again, but I truly have no other options." The message was sent, carrying the last shred of pride she had left. But less than a second later, her blood ran cold as she read the recipient's name. It wasn't CLA. It was Nick. Her heart stopped, suspended midair like a pendulum frozen in time. Nick, the man who had left her 4 years ago, was now a billionaire at the pinnacle of success. And she was a single mother living in a tiny apartment no bigger than a matchbox. Her phone buzzed, snapping her out of her shock. "Wait for me. I'm coming over." Emily panicked. This couldn't be happening. She hurriedly typed out another message. "Sorry, wrong person. Please forget this ever happened." But before she could breathe a sigh of relief, a notification from her bank appeared on the screen, making her freeze. A transaction? No, it couldn't be. $1 million. Before she could process what had just happened, a knock at the door shattered the tense silence in the apartment. Emily got up, each step feeling heavier than the last. She opened the door, and there he was, Nick, the man who had once been her everything, standing tall like a ghost from her past. "We need to talk," Nick said, his piercing blue eyes locking onto hers. The small apartment felt even smaller, not because of its size, but because of the weight of unspoken words and memories that hung between them. Emily stood frozen, face to face with Nick, the man she had tried to erase from her mind for the past 4 years. He looked flawless, almost unreal, in a meticulously tailored suit, a stark contrast to her worn-out sweater with traces of formula from the last bottle she had made. "What do you want, Nick?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the storm brewing inside her. Nick didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stepped into the apartment without waiting for permission. His eyes swept over the cramped space, noting every detail with a sharpness that made Emily feel exposed, as if all her efforts to keep her life from falling apart had been stripped bare in an instant. "You need help," Nick stated, his voice low and firm. "And I'm going to help." Emily let out a bitter laugh, a sound laced with sarcasm and pain. "Help? You think you could just walk in here, throw money at me, and call it help?" She crossed her arms, her eyes challenging him. "Where were you when I really needed you? When I was holding Lily, not knowing how I was going to feed her? Where were you?" Nick didn't look away, but something flickered in his blue eyes. Pain, maybe regret. "I was wrong," he admitted, each word cutting through the charged silence between them like a knife. "I left when I should have stayed, but I want to make it right now." Emily frowned, unsure if she'd heard correctly. Nick, admitting he was wrong? The man who had always seen himself as infallible? She laughed again, but this time, there was no sarcasm, only a sense of despair. "Make it right," she repeated. "You think wiring $1 million into my account is going to fix everything? Do you have any idea what this will do? Banks, reporters, the whole world will start digging into who poor little Emily is. And Lily? She'll become the target of vultures. Is this what you call helping?" Nick remained silent, but his calm demeanor only fueled her anger. "I've managed on my own, Nick," she said, her voice trembling from both anger and exhaustion. "I don't need you." "No," he replied, his voice steady and resolute. "You don't need me, but Lily does. You can hate me, you can shut me out, but don't do it for her." His words pierced through her like an arrow. She opened her mouth to argue, but nothing came out. Deep down, she knew he was right. Lily needed more than what she could provide. More than just money, but a chance at a better life. Yet admitting that would mean accepting something even more painful. She needed Nick, at least for Lily's sake. Before she could respond, a soft cry from Lily's room interrupted them. Emily turned and quickly walked to her daughter's room. Nick stood alone in the living room, watching the door close behind her. He exhaled heavily, the weight of unsaid words pressing on his chest. Determination flickered in his eyes. He knew he had hurt Emily, knew she had every reason not to trust him. But this time, he wasn't leaving. No matter how hard she pushed him away, he wouldn't give up. When Emily returned, she was carrying Lily in her arms, a tiny girl with bright, curious eyes that locked onto Nick immediately. He smiled a faint, genuine smile. "Hi, Lily," he said softly, his voice warm and gentle, surprising even Emily. Lily stared at him, her eyes filled with curiosity. "Who's that, Mommy?" Emily swallowed hard, trying to steady her voice. "He's a friend." Nick's lips curved slightly, his eyes meeting Emily's. He didn't say anything, but she could see it in his gaze. He wasn't going anywhere. He wasn't just here for Lily. He wanted to make things right with her too. But Emily wasn't sure if she could let him. The storm between them had only just begun. Nick stepped out of the apartment, leaving Emily frozen in the dark as the sound of the door closing reverberated like an alarm in the suffocating silence. That night, Emily drifted into a restless sleep, haunted by a storm of memories and present fears, threatening to wash away everything she was holding on to. The next morning, the incessant ringing of her phone yanked her out of her turbulent dreams. Grabbing it, she saw her screen flooded with messages, missed calls, and emails. Her trembling fingers scrolled through the notifications, and she felt the tidal wave of media attention crashing down on her. One email stood out, its subject line blazing in bold red. "Exclusive interview. Your story." Her eyes scanned the content, an enticing offer with a hefty payout. But the smell of money only made her nauseous. Before she could process it further, another message popped up. "I'm outside. We need to talk." Her heart skipped a beat. Peeking through the curtains, she spotted a black SUV parked in front of her building like a shadow lurking in the daylight. The car door opened, and Nick stepped out, his sharp demeanor and resolute gaze cutting through the morning air. Before he could approach, Emily flung the door open, her glare as sharp as a blade. "I told you to stay out of my life," she snapped, her voice laced with both fear and anger. Nick remained unfazed, his calm eyes heavy with determination. "I'm not here to argue, Emily. We have a problem." "A problem?" She let out a bitter laugh, crossing her arms. "I'm being bombarded with interview emails, my phone is blowing up, and my life has become a circus because of you. That's what you call a problem? It's not just the media." His voice dropped, heavy with a deeper seriousness. "There's something more dangerous." Emily frowned. "What are you talking about?" Nick stepped inside, closing the door firmly behind him as if to shut out the chaos. Pulling out his phone, he showed her the screen. An email from an anonymous sender glared back at her. "You've made too much noise, Mr. Dalton. If you want this to stay quiet, pay up. Otherwise, the world will know your dirty little secrets." A wave of suffocating dread crashed over Emily. "Is this blackmail?" Nick nodded, his expression grimmer than ever. "They're threatening to expose details about the money transfer and about Lily." The words hit her like a hammer. Emily's composure shattered, and she sank onto the couch, her breaths coming fast and shallow. "Oh God, this is a nightmare." "I've already contacted my security team," Nick said, his voice steady and reassuring. "We're tracking down whoever's behind this." Emily shot up, her eyes blazing with anger. "Tracking down? Do you really think you can find them before they blow everything wide open? You have no idea what we're up against." Nick stepped closer, placing a firm but gentle hand on her shoulder. His eyes, though steely, held an uncharacteristic softness. "I won't let that happen. I'll protect you and Lily, no matter what it takes." Emily wanted to scream, to unleash the fury that had been building inside her. But his unwavering gaze silenced her. She turned away, but a question gnawed at her mind. Could she trust him again? In the days that followed, Emily was drawn into Nick's world, a world she had never wanted to enter. She watched cybersecurity experts working tirelessly, sophisticated surveillance equipment buzzing around her, and Nick's determined expression as he made calls with relentless focus. Despite hating the circumstances, she couldn't deny that, for the first time in years, She felt like someone truly had her back. But the tension between them remained, like a taut string on the verge of snapping. Their story was far from over. Emily sat on the sofa, gripping her phone tightly, her eyes fixed on the screen as if waiting for something that could change her world. The small apartment felt suffocatingly silent, except for Lily's giggles as she played with her toys in the corner, blissfully unaware of the tension hanging in the air. When the phone buzzed, Emily nearly jumped. Seeing Nick's name on the screen, her heart pounded, and her fingertips went cold as she swiped to answer. "Nick," she said, her voice breaking with worry. "It's over," he replied, his tone steady but laced with exhaustion. "Carter has been arrested." Emily sank back into the sofa, relief washing over her like a tidal wave. "How? What happened?" "It was all a bluff," Nick explained, his voice carrying a hint of calm. "He didn't have the resources to follow through with his threats. He was just hoping I'd pay him off before he ran out of options." Emily let out a shaky laugh, the tension of the past days finally releasing. "I can't believe it's really over." "It's over," Nick repeated firmly. "You and Lily are safe now." In the days that followed, Emily found herself navigating a whirlwind of emotions. The media storm began to subside, thanks to Nick's lawyers and a carefully crafted statement. But deep down, she knew the real challenge was just beginning. One evening, as she tucked Lily into bed, the faint sound of a soft knock on the door frame made her turn. Nick stood there, looking uncharacteristically hesitant, a rare sight for the usually confident man. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice gentle. She nodded, following him into the living room. They sat on the sofa, a heavy silence between them, filled with words that had never been spoken. "I meant what I said," Nick began, his gaze steady. "I want to be part of Lily's life and yours." Emily looked down at her hands, as if searching for answers. "Nick, you've hurt me so much. I don't know if I can forgive you. But I can't deny that you were here when it mattered most." "I'll take that," he said with a faint smile. "I'm not asking for everything at once. Just a chance." She looked up, and for the first time in years, she saw something new in his eyes: vulnerability. This wasn't the arrogant, selfish man she had once married. This was a man trying to make things right, willing to fight for his family. "Okay," she whispered softly but firmly. "A chance." Nick's smile grew wider, and in that moment, the weight of the past seemed to lift slightly. They sat there in silence, yet it felt as though 1,000 unspoken words had passed between them. As time went on, Emily and Nick began to rebuild their relationship piece by piece. The process wasn't easy. Trust took time, and the wounds of the past still needed healing. But for the first time, Emily allowed herself to feel something she hadn't felt in years: hope. One evening, she stood at Lily's bedroom door, watching as Nick sat on the bed, reading a bedtime story. His voice was warm, each word filled with love. Emily smiled softly, realizing that second chances weren't about erasing the past. They were about creating a future worth fighting for.